Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the prescription bottle hidden beneath her travel documents. The damning evidence of her deception scattered across the small airplane tray table. The morphine tablets rattled softly as turbulence shook the aircraft, and she quickly shoved them back into her carry-on bag. But not before Ethan's curious eyes caught the medical label from the seat beside her. "Pain medication?" he asked gently, his chef's hands calloused from years of knife work and burns reaching out to steady her shaking fingers. "Are you okay?" The lie came easier than she'd expected. "Just some old back pain from a hiking accident," Maya said, forcing a smile as she zipped her bag closed. She'd been practicing this deception for 3 months, ever since Dr. Morrison had delivered the verdict that would change everything. 6 months, maybe 8 if she was lucky. The terminal cancer diagnosis had been both a death sentence and a strange kind of liberation. Ethan nodded, but she caught the flicker of concern in his dark eyes. They'd met at the airport gate in Seattle, both delayed by the same snowstorm that had grounded flights to Fairbanks. What started as small talk over overpriced coffee had evolved into an impromptu decision to share the journey north. He was running from something too. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened whenever he mentioned his restaurant back in Portland, the way he'd destroyed his phone after a particularly heated call with someone named Marcus. "So, what's really driving you to Alaska?" Maya asked, deflecting attention from herself as she always did. "Most people don't abandon their kitchens in December to chase the northern lights." Ethan's laugh held no humor. "Let's just say I discovered my business partner and my fiancé had more in common than just their investment in my restaurant." He signaled the flight attendant for another whiskey. "Turns out they'd been collaborating for months. Found them in my own kitchen after hours, using my prep table for activities that definitely weren't food-related." Maya felt her heart clench with unexpected empathy. Here was someone else whose world had been shattered by betrayal, though his came from unfaithfulness rather than failing cells. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and meant it. "The worst part wasn't even the cheating," Ethan continued, his voice growing rough. "It was that they'd been planning to force me out of my own restaurant. Had the paperwork drawn up and everything. 20 years of building my reputation, my dream, and they were going to take it all." The plane began its descent into Fairbanks, and Maya pressed her face to the small window, watching the snow-covered landscape spread out below them like a blank canvas. In the reflection of the glass, she could see Ethan watching her, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared pain, perhaps, or simply the acknowledgement that they were both running towards something uncertain. "Maybe we're both exactly where we need to be," Maya said softly, not turning from the window. The northern lights had been on her bucket list since childhood, but now they represented something more profound, a final gift to herself before the darkness claimed her. She just hadn't expected to find someone who might make the journey mean something more than just a solitary goodbye to the world. As the plane touched down on the icy runway, Maya made a decision that would define the remaining days of her life. She would let herself feel everything this journey might offer, even if it meant breaking both their hearts in the end. The aurora borealis danced across the star-drunk sky in ribbons of green and silver, but Maya found herself watching Ethan's face instead of the celestial display. They lay side by side on the frozen ground outside Fairbanks, wrapped in heavy sleeping bags and sharing body heat, their breath creating small clouds that dissipated into the crystalline air. "I've never seen anything like this," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with the same wonder Maya had heard when he described his signature dishes. "It's like watching the universe paint itself." Maya turned onto her side, studying his profile. In the ethereal light, 3 days had passed since their flight landed, and what was supposed to be a brief shared journey had become something neither of them had anticipated. Ethan had found them a cabin rental outside the city, insisting it made more sense economically, though Maya suspected his motives were more emotional than financial. "Tell me about your restaurant," she said, partly to distract herself from the growing pain in her abdomen, and partly because she genuinely wanted to know more about this man, who was making her reconsider everything about her final months. Ethan's expression shifted, vulnerability replacing the easy charm he usually wore. "Confluence, that's what I called it. The idea was to bring together different culinary traditions, my grandmother's Korean recipes, with French techniques I learned in culinary school, mixed with Pacific Northwest ingredients. His voice grew softer. I wanted to create something that honored where I came from while pushing toward something new. Past tense, Maya asked gently. Marcus and Sheila, my ex-fiancé, they wanted to rebrand it, make it more accessible to suburban palates. Translation: whitewash it until it's just another generic bistro. Ethan sat up abruptly, running his hands through his dark hair. 20 years of building my reputation, and they want to erase everything that makes it mine. Maya reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. So why are you here instead of fighting for it? Because I found them together on Christmas Eve, Ethan said, his voice breaking slightly. In the kitchen where I'd been planning to propose to Sheila on New Year's. I walked in to grab some ingredients for Christmas dinner, and there they were, christening my prep station in ways that definitely violated health code regulations. Despite the pain in his voice, Maya couldn't help but smile at his ability to find dark humor even in betrayal. So you ran away to Alaska? I liquidated my savings and bought a plane ticket to the furthest place I could think of. Ethan lay back down beside her, closer this time. What about you? What are you really running from, Maya? The question hung between them like a challenge. Maya felt the weight of her deception pressing against her chest, heavier than the pain medication she'd swallowed an hour earlier. She wanted to tell him everything about the cancer spreading through her liver, about the way she'd given up her apartment and quit her job as a graphic designer, about how this trip was meant to be her final adventure before the inevitable. But looking at Ethan's face, still raw from his own betrayal, she couldn't bear to add another layer of pain to his story. I'm running toward something, she said instead, which was also true. I've spent too many years playing it safe, staying in relationships that were comfortable but not passionate, working jobs that paid the bills but didn't feed my soul. I guess I realized life's too short to waste on mediocrity. Ethan moved closer, his arms slipping around her waist. How short do you think life is? Maya's breath caught. If only he knew. Shorter than we want, longer than we fear, she whispered, borrowing a phrase from a poetry book she'd read during one of her many hospital waiting room visits. Above them, the aurora intensified, painting the sky in bold strokes of emerald and sapphire. Ethan turned to face her fully, his eyes searching hers in the cosmic light. Maya, he said softly, I know we've only known each other for a few days, but I feel something with you that I never felt with Sheila. Something real. Before she could respond, he kissed her. It was tentative at first, then deeper as she responded, her hands finding the strong line of his shoulders beneath his heavy coat. The kiss tasted of hot chocolate and possibility, of the kind of connection she'd always hoped to find but never quite believed in. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya felt tears freezing on her cheeks. I feel it too, she admitted, knowing that each word was both a gift and a cruelty to both of them. Steam rose from the natural hot springs like incense, and Maya sank into the mineral-rich water with a sigh that was part relief, part desire. The remote springs were accessible only by snowshoe, a 2-hour trek through pristine wilderness that had left her more exhausted than she'd expected. The cancer was progressing faster than her doctors had predicted, though she'd hidden this from Ethan with carefully timed medication and strategic rest stops. This is incredible, Ethan said, settling into the water beside her, his muscled frame relaxed for the first time since she'd known him. I can't believe we have this entire place to ourselves. Maya leaned back against the smooth rocks, letting the heat penetrate her aching bones. The guidebook said most tourists don't venture this far out. They stick to the commercial hot springs near Fairbanks. Their loss, Ethan murmured, moving closer until his thigh brushed against hers beneath the water. The contact sent electricity through her exhausted body, reminding her that she was still very much alive, still capable of wanting someone with an intensity that surprised her. They'd been in Alaska for a week now, and the pretense of separate sleeping arrangements had gradually dissolved into shared meals, shared stories, and shared silences that spoke of growing intimacy. Maya had begun to understand what people meant when they talked about finding their person, that sense of recognition that transcended logic or timeline. Maya, Ethan said, his voice husky in the steam-thick air, I need to tell you something. She turned to face him, water droplets clinging to his dark lashes. "What? I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between them like a confession and a question. "I know it's crazy. I know we barely know each other. But I've never felt anything like this before. With Sheila, everything was planned, expected. This feels like coming alive." Maya's heart broke and soared simultaneously. She wanted to tell him that she loved him too, that these past days had been the most vibrant of her entire life, that he'd shown her what it meant to be truly seen by another person. Instead, she pressed her lips to his, pouring all her unspoken truths into the kiss. The water lapped around them as Ethan's hands found her waist, pulling her closer until she was straddling his lap, their bodies separated only by the thin fabric of their swimwear. Maya had lost weight since her diagnosis, but Ethan's touch made her feel beautiful, desired, fully present in her own skin. "Are you sure?" he whispered against her neck, his breath hot against her damp skin. Instead of answering with words, Maya reached behind her and untied her bikini top, letting it float away on the current. Ethan's sharp intake of breath was answer enough. His hands moved reverently over her bare skin, tracing the delicate line of her collarbones, the soft curve of her breasts. Maya arched into his touch, marveling at how alive she felt despite the death growing inside her. They made love slowly, carefully, the hot water providing buoyancy and warmth as they learned each other's bodies. Maya had been with other men before, but never with this sense of urgency mixed with tenderness, never with the knowledge that every moment was both precious and finite. When Ethan whispered her name like a prayer, when his body moved with hers in perfect synchronization, she felt herself shatter and remake herself around this unexpected love. Afterward, they floated together in the mineral-rich water, Maya's head resting on Ethan's chest as he stroked her wet hair. The silence was comfortable, profound, and Maya allowed herself to imagine a different world, where she had years to explore this connection, where they could build something lasting together. "I want to cook for you," Ethan said suddenly, his voice rumbling through his chest. "Really cook for you, not just trail mix and instant coffee. I want to show you what I can create when I have proper ingredients and a real kitchen." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his dreams settling around them. "I'd like that," she said softly, knowing that tomorrow she would have to begin the process of saying goodbye, of protecting him from the devastation that was coming. For now, though, she let herself float in the fantasy of forever, her body intertwined with his as the northern lights began their nightly dance. Across the star-scattered sky, Maya, Ethan's voice was sleepy, content. Thank you for helping me remember what it feels like to be happy." Maya pressed her face against his chest, tears mixing with the mineral water. "Thank you for showing me what it feels like to be truly loved," she whispered. Though she wasn't sure if he heard her, the water held them both warm and weightless, as if they could float forever in this moment before reality pulled them back to shore. Maya collapsed on the hiking trail, her knees hitting the frozen ground with enough force to send shockwaves through her already aching body. The prescription bottle tumbled from her jacket pocket, spilling white pills across the snow like fallen stars. She watched helplessly as Ethan, who had been photographing a ptarmigan just ahead on the trail, turned at the sound of her fall. "Maya!" He rushed to her side, his camera forgotten as he knelt beside her. His eyes immediately found the scattered medication, and she watched his expression shift from concern to confusion to a growing, terrible understanding. "Morphine sulfate," he read from the label, his voice hollow. "Maya Elizabeth Santos for severe pain management." She tried to speak, to offer another lie, but her body betrayed her with a wave of nausea so intense she could only curl into herself and wait for it to pass. Ethan gathered the pills with methodical precision, his chef's hands steady even as his world crumbled around them. "How long?" he asked quietly, helping her sit up against a snow-covered boulder. "How long have you been dying?" The question hung in the crystalline air between them, sharp and unavoidable. Maya looked at his face, this beautiful, complicated man who had shown her what love could feel like, and felt the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble. 6 months, she whispered. "Maybe 8 if I'm lucky. Liver cancer, stage 4. It's already spread to my lymph nodes." Ethan rocked back on his heels as if she'd struck him. Jesus, Maya, Jesus. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as his way of processing impossible information. The whole trip, the northern lights, this was my goodbye to the world. Yes, Maya forced herself to meet his eyes, to own the magnitude of what she'd done to both of them. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to fall in love with you. But you did, Ethan said, his voice cracking. You fell in love with me, and you let me fall in love with you. And you never told me that you were. He couldn't finish the sentence. I'm sorry, Maya said, though the words felt pathetically inadequate. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I thought I could have this one perfect experience before everything ended. I thought I could compartmentalize it, keep it separate from the rest of my life. But then you became everything. Ethan stood abruptly, pacing a small circle in the snow. Do you have any idea what this feels like? I just escaped one massive betrayal. And now I find out that the person I've fallen in love with has been lying to me about the most fundamental fact of her existence. It's not the same thing. Maya protested, struggling to her feet. Sheila and Marcus betrayed you for their own gain. I lied to protect you. Protect me? Ethan's laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. You think lying about dying protects me? You think letting me plan a future with you protects me? Maya felt something inside her chest crack open, and not from the cancer. What future, Ethan? I don't have a future. That's the whole point. I have weeks, maybe months, and most of those are going to be spent in hospitals or hospice care, wasting away until I'm not even recognizable as the person you think you love. That's not your decision to make, Ethan shot back. You don't get to decide what I can handle, what I'm willing to face. I'm a grown man, Maya. I've dealt with loss before. Not like this. Maya's voice broke. Not watching someone you love disappear piece by piece, fighting battles they can't win, becoming a ghost of themselves while you stand helplessly by. I won't do that to you. I won't let you watch me die. Ethan stopped pacing, his shoulders sagging with the weight of understanding. But I am going to watch you die, Maya. The only difference is now I know it's coming. And I know that every moment we've shared has been built on a lie. They stood facing each other on the frozen trail, to people who had found something extraordinary and beautiful, now watching it shatter against the harsh reality of mortality and deception. Maya could see the exact moment when Ethan's anger transformed into something deeper and more devastating. Grief. I love you, he said simply. Despite everything, despite the lying, despite the dying, I love you. And I don't know how to reconcile that with how betrayed I feel right now. Maya nodded, tears freezing on her cheeks. I love you too, more than I ever thought possible. And I understand if you can't forgive me for this. Ethan walked over to where his camera lay forgotten in the snow, brushing off the lens with automatic care. We should head back, he said quietly. You need to rest, and I need to think. They walked back to the cabin in silence. The distance between them measured not in footsteps, but in the magnitude of secrets revealed, and trust shattered. Maya knew that even if Ethan could forgive her deception, they would never again have the innocent joy of those first days together. Death had claimed not just her future, but theirs as well. Snow fell softly outside the cabin windows as Maya packed her few belongings, each folded item a small act of surrender. 3 days had passed since her collapse on the trail. 3 days of careful politeness and devastating silence. Ethan had been kind but distant, cooking her meals and ensuring she took her medication. But the easy intimacy they'd shared had been replaced by the careful choreography of two people navigating around a grief too large for the space between them. You don't have to leave, Ethan said from the doorway, his voice carefully neutral. He held 2 cups of coffee, steam rising like prayers in the morning light. Maya accepted the cup with hands that trembled slightly, whether from medication or emotion. She couldn't say. Yes, I do. We both know this isn't sustainable. You're trying to take care of me out of some misplaced sense of obligation, and I'm dying a little more each day. That's not fair to either of us. Ethan sat heavily in the chair across from her, his dark eyes rimmed with exhaustion. I've been thinking about what you said, about not wanting me to watch you die, and I think you're wrong. Ethan leaned forward, his voice gaining strength. I think you're making the same mistake I made with my restaurant. I ran instead of fighting for what mattered to me. I let fear and betrayal convince me that cutting and running was easier than staying. And dealing with the mess, Maya set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. This isn't a restaurant, Ethan. This isn't something you can fight for or fix with determination and hard work. I am going to die, probably sooner than later, and it's going to be ugly and painful and nothing like the romantic tragedy you're imagining. Maybe, Ethan said simply, but maybe it doesn't have to be only that. Maybe there's also beauty and connection and love worth having, even if it's temporary, even if it breaks your heart. My heart's already broken, Maya. The question is whether I want it to be broken and empty, or broken and full. Ethan moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in his. I called my lawyer yesterday, and my accountant. I'm going to fight for my restaurant, not because I'm guaranteed to win, but because it's worth fighting for. Maya felt her carefully constructed resolve begin to waver. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to fight for this too. For us. For whatever time we have left. Ethan's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I want to take you home to Portland. I want to cook for you every day. I want to show you my city, introduce you to my friends, build something real with you for however long we have. And when the cancer gets worse, when I can't eat your beautiful food anymore, when I'm too weak to leave the house, when I become someone you don't recognize, then I'll adapt. I'll learn to cook for your new needs. I'll bring the world to you instead of taking you to it. And when you're not you anymore, I'll love whoever you become. Ethan's voice cracked. Maya, you taught me what it feels like to be truly alive. How can I walk away from that just because it's temporary? Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the fear that had driven every decision since her diagnosis. It's going to be so hard, Ethan. Harder than you can imagine. I know. But I also know that running away from hard things is what landed me in this cabin. In the first place, Ethan squeezed her hands. I don't want to run anymore. I want to choose love. Even if it's complicated, even if it hurts. Through the window, Maya could see the northern lights beginning their ethereal dance across the dawn sky, an unusual daytime appearance that felt like a benediction. She had come to Alaska to say goodbye to the world, but instead she had found someone who made her want to say hello to whatever time remained. Okay. She whispered, the word barely audible but carrying the weight of complete surrender. Okay, let's try. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the aurora painted the sky in impossible colors. To people who had found each other in the midst of running away, now choosing to run towards something together instead. 6 months later, Maya died peacefully in the Portland apartment she and Ethan had shared, surrounded by the smell of his cooking and the warmth of his love. Her last conscious words were a whispered thank you for the unexpected gift of being truly known, truly loved, even in the shadow of death. Ethan scattered her ashes under the northern lights the following winter, carrying with him not just grief, but gratitude for a love that had been both devastatingly brief and perfectly complete. A question for reflection. Was Maya's initial decision to hide her terminal diagnosis an act of kindness, meant to protect Ethan from pain? Or was it a selfish choice that robbed him of the agency to make his own decisions about love and loss in matters of the heart? Do we have the right to make choices for others in the name of protecting them? Or does love require the courage of complete honesty, regardless of the consequences?